Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Today, on Thursday, we have the reading that we have all been waiting for in the Gospel. The genealogy of Jesus through the Gospel of Matthew's eyes. Wow. How exciting can you get? And it can absolutely put people to sleep in the pews. However, there is, believe it or not, some significant theological depth to this genealogy. So I'd like to just point out a couple of things. First of all, why a genealogy? And just as it was used in ancient literature, genealogies were used to sort of show the pedigree of a human being. And in this case, in Matthew's gospel, to show how Jesus is the fulfillment of the faith of Israel. And so Matthew's genealogy goes from Abraham to David to the Babylonian exile to Jesus. Abraham, the father of faith. David, the great king, the anointed one from whom the Messiah shall descend. And the Babylonian exile, the great experience of desolation that marked Jewish history, and the profound crying out for the coming of a Messiah. So that's Matthew's key theological idea. By setting up this genealogy this way, he's saying Jesus is the fulfillment of this history of Israel that began with Abraham. But he also neatly divides it up into these three units, and each unit has 14 generations. Now, there's very little historical accuracy here. Some of the things that Matthew is taking directly from other biblical texts. So there may be some, a little bit along the way. But that's not relevant, not at all to Matthew. I mean, we would get upset by something like that, but that's not Matthew's concern. Matthew's concern is to show the reader, look, see this pattern that's playing itself out? 14 generations from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the exile, 14 from the exile to Jesus. And the Jews loved numbers. And so the number 7 symbolized perfection. And therefore multiples of 7, like 14, would also symbolize that. Some would even say, 14 is sort of an extra perfection, if you would. So yeah, there's more there than might meet the eye. I hope you're not falling asleep in the pews. Matthew's got something really interesting in there too. Matthew is pointing out the women. Now, Jewish genealogies are through the male side, right? And that's true for Matthew too. But he does throw in there 5 women throughout this, whatever that would be. It's probably about 1,800 years from the time of Abraham to the time of Jesus. And 5 women. Who are these women? Well, the thing about them is that they are not these women that would be glorified by their power, by their sort of special holiness necessarily. They're rather 5 women who are characterized by their sort of uniqueness, their being outside the typical narrative. The first one of them is Tamar. And Tamar was a woman who disguised herself as a prostitute in order to have Judah's child. So this genealogy is not exactly laden with saints necessarily. And Rahab, the next one, probably was a prostitute and also an innkeeper. But she hides two of Joshua's spies and saves their lives in doing so. So again, nothing particularly special about this woman in terms of her character, but then she becomes a great figure in the tradition. Paul even refers to her as somebody who's an example of faith by deeds. The third one is, let's see, who's the third one? Ruth. And Ruth is a Moabite woman who is married to an Israelite. When he dies, she stays connected to her sister-in-law, Naomi, who has also lost her Israelite husband. And so that famous song that we sing, "Wherever you go, I shall go," that's from Ruth. As she tells Naomi, we stick together. And Ruth goes back with Naomi to become a part of the tradition. And after Ruth, there's Bathsheba, although Matthew doesn't actually refer to her by name. He refers to her as the wife of Uriah, which is really, ouch. That's hardly sort of great praise for the great King David. It's like, wait a minute, David. In order for you to have this woman as your wife, you had to, first of all, seduce her into adultery, and then secondly, have her husband killed off in battle. So Matthew is not mincing words here when he throws the wife of Uriah into this genealogy. He's saying, this God is writing, history with crooked lines here. And then last, and certainly not least, that's for sure, is Mary, the mother of Jesus. But even in her case, there's a peculiarity with it. How so? Well, because she is not conceived, Jesus is not conceived by the normal means. So Matthew's genealogy, as dull as it sounds while we're sitting in the pew, actually has quite a few really important points that it's trying to make. One last thing. Let's compare it quickly to Luke's genealogy. A lot of the names are very different. But the most important thing about the difference is how Luke does what Matthew does. He takes it back to the exile and then to David and to Abraham, although he doesn't break it down into 14 groups. But he keeps going. He keeps going past Abraham. So clearly here, he's in sort of, Genesis materials they're not at all historical, but that's not his point. Again, he's going all the way back to Adam. So Luke's point, which, expands on Matthew. Jesus is not only the Messiah of Israel, he's also the Messiah of the entire human race, because the whole human race stems from Adam. Hey, thanks for hanging in there for 8 minutes and 44 seconds on a genealogy. Peace to you.